What is it like to be conscious? This simple question highlights one of the biggest mysteries in science, the hard problem of consciousness. We all have subjective experiences, a feeling of what it's like to be ourselves. We see colors, hear sounds, and feel emotions. But how does this inner world arise from the physical matter of the brain? For centuries, philosophers and scientists have grappled with this question. We can study the brain and understand its structure and function, but explaining how this physical activity gives rise to the subjective experience of consciousness remains a challenge. Understanding the nature of consciousness is not just an academic exercise. It has profound implications for our understanding of reality, the self, and what it means to be human. The hard problem of consciousness is particularly challenging because it is unlike any other scientific problem. While physics can explain the behavior of matter and energy, and biology can explain the mechanisms of life, consciousness seems to be of a different kind. It is not directly observable or measurable in the same way that other scientific phenomena are. The brain is a complex organ made up of billions of neurons, interconnected cells that communicate through electrical and chemical signals. When we experience something, sensory information is transmitted from our sense organs to the brain, where it is processed and interpreted. This neural activity gives rise to our thoughts, emotions, and sensations. Imagine a vast network of interconnected computers, each one sending and receiving signals. This is a simplified way to think about the brain. The electrical activity of neurons creates patterns and rhythms that correspond to different mental states. For example, when we see a red apple, certain neurons in our brain fire in a specific pattern that represents the color red. However, the link between brain activity and conscious experience is not straightforward. We can observe neural activity, but we cannot directly observe the subjective experience associated with it. This is where the hard problem arises. How can we explain the subjective, qualitative nature of consciousness in terms of objective physical processes? The crux of the hard problem is the explanatory gap between the physical and the phenomenal. We can describe the physical processes of the brain in great detail, but this does not seem to get us any closer to understanding why these processes are accompanied by subjective experience. How can electrical signals in the brain give rise to the feeling of what it's like to see the color red, or taste chocolate, or feel the warmth of the sun on our skin? This gap between the objective and the subjective is what makes the hard problem so difficult. It is not simply a matter of finding the right neural correlates of consciousness, or identifying the specific brain regions involved in different experiences. The real challenge is to explain how and why any physical system, no matter how complex, can give rise to subjective experience at all. Some philosophers and scientists believe that the hard problem is ultimately unsolvable, that consciousness is a fundamental aspect of the universe that cannot be reduced to physical processes. Others believe that we simply need new scientific tools and concepts to bridge the explanatory gap. Despite the challenges, there are several promising theories that attempt to explain consciousness. Integrated Information Theory, IIT, proposes that consciousness is a fundamental property of systems that have a high degree of integrated information. Global Workspace Theory, GWT, suggests that consciousness arises from a global workspace in the brain where information is broadcast and shared among different modules. Panpsychism, a more radical view, proposes that consciousness is a fundamental property of all matter, not just brains. This theory suggests that even seemingly inanimate objects like rocks or atoms possess some level of consciousness, albeit extremely rudimentary. OR, a theory developed by physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, posits that consciousness arises from quantum mechanical processes occurring within microtubules, which are structural components of neurons. These theories offer different perspectives on the relationship between the brain and consciousness, and each has its own strengths and weaknesses. While none of them has yet provided a definitive solution to the hard problem, they represent important steps towards a deeper understanding of this profound mystery. The quest to understand consciousness is ongoing, and it is one of the most exciting and challenging frontiers in science today.